We will continue to provide sorry, I forgot that. We will continue to be extended arms and ear for our community, and hopefully we can find more additional information for everybody. So with that, I'm just going to turn over to our LA County Planning team to start sharing her updates.
Hi,
So,
good morning, everyone. I'm Adriana Valencia. I am a regional planner with LA County. I am working with the disaster recovery team that we formed very recently to address all of the rebuild applications and providing consultation and direction in terms of rebuilding, both in the from the Palisades fire as well as the Eaton fire. And I'm just working here to get my to share my screen and my presentation. But yeah, I'm here today to provide just some updates on our disaster recovery efforts, provide some general information on rebuilding, both in terms of temporary housing, post cleanup of the debris removal, as well as providing some general information on the application process, and also providing information as to what options are out there in terms of rebuilding. So I'll go ahead and get us started. So to provide an overview, today I'll be talking about just the framework that we're working off of. We've had a lot of directives from the state, county level, and so how we're just providing a brief update on how we're interpreting those policy updates, as well as what that means for our workflow, as well as we're processing, receiving applications, we're counseling people, and then also sharing resources, just direct information as to where to find any updates related to our recovery efforts, where to apply, and what different departments are involved in the rebuilding process as well. So getting into the framework that we're working off of, as I mentioned, those policies that we're working with. So the first one related to temporary housing, there are 4 buckets or more like options that people can take in terms of temporary housing, right? We get the parcel cleaned up post debris removal, either that's by LA County Building and Safety or the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And if families choose to do so, they can live in temporary housing. So that can be RVs, manufactured homes, mobile homes, or ADUs. The 4th option, ADUs, I'll get to in a minute. But generally speaking, yeah, there are 4 options in terms of housing. These are the standards set forth in order to qualify as temporary housing on a lot that has been impacted by the fires that happened in January. Our Title 22, so our county code, dictates that these temporary housing options may not be bigger than 1,500 square feet in size. They must be placed on a developed part of the lot, so that could look like a slab, or working with an architect to get that area in the correct condition to be able to have a mobile home or a temporary form of housing. It must contain sleeping, cooking, bathing, and sanitary facilities. It must be connected to electrical, water, and wastewater for that to be able to work. And then the unit must be removed within 30 days after a certificate of occupancy is issued for the replacement unit. So when people are in the process of rebuilding the actual home, they receive a certificate of occupancy through building and safety, I believe. And that is when they must work to remove the temporary form of housing, if it's within one of these 3, right? The RVs, the manufactured homes, or the mobile homes. This permit expires after 2 years of the date of the emergency declaration. So I believe that would be 2 years after January 7th of this year. And things are always changing. Some of these regulations are changing. The timelines may change. I definitely recommend that people refer back to our LA County Recovers website for those updates, should they choose to move forward with the temporary form of housing. The fourth option that I had mentioned earlier, being accessory dwelling units or ADUs, we received a state executive order that allows for the development of new ADUs on properties where the primary residence was damaged or destroyed. So basically, the applicants receive a certificate of occupancy for the ADUs before the certificate of occupancy for the main dwelling unit is issued. And these ADUs must adhere to the development standards set forth by the county. We are working on this workflow for processing applications related to ADUs just because it's something that's different from previous fires. However, we do know that proposed ADUs must meet those development standards. Usually it looks like 4 feet setbacks around the unit itself, at least within LA County. However, we do recommend again that the individuals continue to look at our website for any updates that come up. We're working to set up our team and working to set up just the workflow for these. I think the it just looks very different in terms of California and getting the ADUs. We're trying to build as much housing as possible, right? But also trying to do it in a way that is safe and up to standards for everybody. So the application for temporary housing, we can see it in the upper right-hand corner. And I'm happy to send out a copy of that if needed to individuals on this call. Essentially, this application requires an acknowledgement form. So that's just it requires a signature by the owner, just acknowledging that it must adhere to the standards. We also are asking for a site plan that shows the location of the unit, and then as well as where the connections are coming from in terms of potable water, wastewater, and electrical. Um, another another section of our workflow is the like-for-like rebuilds. And so within our title or our LA County code, like-for-like rebuilds is defined by Title 22 in our code, and the section is outlined there. So essentially, it's a like-for-like replacement of the structures that is the same in size, the same location, and the same use as the previous structure. So a residential house, for example, will obviously be rebuilt as a residential house with the same outline or footprint as the former house. The replacement structure may be approved with modifications if it doesn't increase the floor area, the size, the height, or building footprint by more than 10%. So essentially, we are providing about 4 options in terms of rebuilding, right? It's the like-for-like rebuild. It's the same exact footprint, same exact size. There's a like-for-like rebuild plus 10%, right? So that can provide, say there was a unit of a residential unit of about 1,000 feet, right? That can look like an additional 100 feet built into the unit. There's the like-for-like plus 10% plus ADU. So that increase in size of the residential structure as well as an ADU. And then the non-like-for-like rebuild, which I will get to in a minute. There are still some zoning regulations, or there are still codes that must be adhered to in terms of building and safety, public health, or fire that may play into this 10% increase. So that's one caveat that we provide to our applicants as well. Should they choose to go above, or should they choose to go with the 10% increase or an ADU. So something that we have seen with applicants, both in Altadena and in the Santa Monica Mountains, is the potential for not being able to rebuild bigger due to the capacity of their septic system, for example. And so that's something that maybe planning can approve, but then there may be hurdles with public health or building and safety. So we do encourage people to also consult with building and safety and fire about these potential increases in terms when rebuilding. So the fourth option, non-like-for-like rebuilds. Whenever individuals are applying for rebuilds that are not like for like, so outside of the building footprint, perhaps they didn't like their home before, they're taking this as the opportunity to build the home that would be ideal for them. Title 22, so our county code will apply in its entirety to projects falling outside of the like for like rebuild, so the exact same footprint or the 10%. And those setback standards do apply. So it would be 20 feet front yard setbacks, 5 feet side yard setbacks, 15 feet rear yard setbacks, and then 30 to 35 feet height limits for residential zones. And this is dependent on any community standards that are set in place for the zone. And so again, this is the application for any rebuilds post-disaster. I can also share a copy of this for individuals to have, but really we're asking, at least on the LA County planning side, all applications start with us. We are the ones providing the first approval, but then we also internally route it to LA County Public Health, LA County Building and Safety, and LA County Fire for approvals as well. To get the process started, we are requiring that folks submit site plans for their rebuild, but later down the line, building and safety may require architectural plans, so that can look like site plans, floor plans, elevations, as well as information as related to property ownership to start the application review with us. And so resources, just to provide more direct information where people can go and look for updates. So LA County Planning, as well as the Departments of Public Health, Building and Safety, and Fire are hosting counseling appointments to offer guidance on the rebuilding process at 2 different locations. The first one being out in Altadena. Our one stop is located at 464 West Woodbury Road, Suite 210 in Altadena. We are hosting appointments from Monday through Friday, and then Saturdays, and those times look different for both. So 9:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays. And then we are also hosting in-person counseling at the Calabasas office, which is at 26600 Aguro Road, Calabasas. We host those Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and Saturdays from 7:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and then 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturdays. Maybe folks cannot make it to in person to receive counseling. We are also offering virtual counseling in terms of the rebuilding process in LA County unincorporated areas. So if anybody would like an appointment, please email disasterrecovery@planning.lacounty.gov or by calling the phone number up on the screen. And then online resources, again, it's really crucial that folks are looking at recovery.lacounty.gov for the most up-to-date information related to the rebuilding process. I am also providing the link to the Department of Regional Planning, just in terms of our efforts, as well as Public Works. Just for more general or more specific information related to building and safety or land use. And thank you so much for having me. I'll take any questions as they come. Thank you.
There we go. Can you hear me? All right, cool. Real quick, Adriana or Adriana, just so people know?
Adriana?
Adriana, okay. Well, I have some questions for you, just based on some of the stuff I've read, and thank you so much again for joining us today. It's really important that we have some city leaders joining, and we're really pleased to have you here today. I've had a number of questions come up around clarifying some specific points around LA County, and we've heard that there's perhaps maybe a new amendment to the disaster code coming out for certain things. So obviously things that you guys haven't made a determination on yet, you can sort of speak candidly about that. So I had a meeting with AIA Valley, and they posited some good questions. A big one for LA County is around basements. So we were told, I think in a visit, if 50% of the basement is buried, it's not going to count towards the floor area. The question is whether or not a basement, if meeting the definition, would count towards the 10% increase.
That's a really great question that we've been getting, and internally we are still working out, but I can definitely follow up via email with any information that I have related to basements and how they apply to the floor plan.
Okay, great. Second part was we were told a few weeks ago, I think this was maybe in February or maybe even January, it's been a minute since we really clarified this, that permits are not going to be issued until phase 2 debris cleanup is finished. Is that phase 2 debris cleanup, does that mean finished on the site the permit is issued, or does that mean the entire jurisdiction phase 2 is going to be complete before permits are issued?
I believe it's based on the parcel itself. I don't think it's related to the jurisdiction.
Parcel needs to be cleared of phase 2. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you. The big question that came up was whether people can, if they had a sloped roof and the peak of the slope, let's say, is at 30 feet, can they bring a flat roof up to that 30-foot mark within this 110%, as long as they don't exceed 110%?
I believe that is possible. Let me get back to you. Let me just check in with my team about that, because we have had some questions related to that as well.
And I would assume as long as it's not increasing floor area by definition of, I think, what is it, 7 feet is less than 7 feet is considered a habitable space, I believe, or attic definition, if you will. Let's see. We heard a rumor that there is going to be a 10% or 200 square feet, whichever is greater for that addition. I imagine that's probably in discussion.
Yes, I have heard that as well. I believe that's what we're moving forward with, whatever is greater.
Okay, great. And then in your, let's see, no latest towards, oh yeah, somebody from AIA was asking whether a seller counts towards the GSA. So in LA County, you guys use GSA, which is a little bit different than, let's say, RFA. Do you want to just explain maybe to the audience how they can do a calculation of GSA? And then the question, I guess, was, does the basement count towards a lot? Oh, does the basement count towards a lot coverage calculation? My understanding is lot coverage is anything above 6 feet from grade, right?
Yeah, so I can definitely follow up relate. I don't think we are looking at GSA in terms of LA County planning. I'm not sure if other departments are counting that though through the application process. A lot of these questions I will need to follow up just because they are specific, and I also just started with the team like maybe about 2 weeks ago. So my apologies if I need to follow up.
Quite all right. That's why that's why I'm here, to test your knowledge and hopefully give you some good questions to get us some good answers. So if an ADU is designed with a site plan showing future residents, can the ADU construction proceed and complete? And you stated, yes, you will be allowing ADUs, and we should be applying for that ADU through the temporary housing portal if we're going to be making that application. And if we do so, then the ADU may be constructed as well as C of O'd before. So I guess that answers a question that's come up, and I need to clarify this with LA City, which is if I wanted to permit my ADU before my single family home, that's actually going to be 2 separate plan check applications, correct? I'd have my application for the single family home under your 110% or like for like rebuild application portal. And then I'd also have my ADU under your temporary housing portal application. Or could I submit both under one plan check, one site plan, one plan check review?
Yeah, so we're still working out that workflow. I think we've been receiving both and then trying to on the back end trying to figure out how to process those.
Yeah.
Again, if you don't mind looking at the website just in terms of that, but I can also follow up as to what the most up-to-date information related to ADU applications are.
Okay. Somebody brought up a question in AIA, which was around ADUs and replacement parking. So I guess if I'm removing a garage on a single family home and turning it into an ADU, I don't have to provide replacement parking. But some architects were being told, I believe at the county level or maybe City of LA, that if they go to propose an ADU now, that because it's a vacant lot, they would have to provide covered parking. So would ADUs still be exempted from providing covered parking? Could they do an ADU in lieu of a garage, for example? Or does a new application now have to have the house, the two covered spaces, the ADU, and the non-covered parking illustrated on the site plan somewhere, driveway or such?
It really does depend on what the development standard or what was there before, and how similar it is to what the previous floor plan was. I know that certain communities, for example, Sunset Mesa and the Santa Monica Mountains, have their own CCNRs that, maybe we do approve a different, or like the removal of the garage with those CCNRs that are set forth by the HOA, maybe conflicting with the new site plan or the removal of the garage itself. And so we are recommending that people also check in with the HOAs to ensure that, that is possible. But let
Do
me
you guys have contacts for those HOAs, or could you perhaps provide them? That would be a very helpful, and I could reach out to the HOAs to try to put together sort of an explanation of their terms, because I know that HOAs don't have a huge staff. We would hate to overwhelm them.
Yeah, I can go ahead and get that information for you. That would be really helpful as well. I know that they've also been impacted by the fires, so that's something that, we could definitely uh get help with in terms of like making those connections and becoming more cohesive.
Yeah, I mean, the more fact sheets we could put out, that would really help. And then obviously we put together a record sweep where we actually review title, so we can take a look at those CCNRs, but it's always valuable, obviously, to sort of verify what is important on those CCNRs and what's going to be applicable today, especially after the disaster. Here's a question that I was thinking about. You mentioned that from 2 years from the disaster recovery ordinance issuance, I think, which is, I suppose the disaster was established on January 7th, I believe. So January 7th of 2027 would be the limiting, the time limit for when a application needs to go in, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And here's a question for you is, in that 2-year period from here to then, if somebody finds out they just don't have the resources or funds to do any kind of construction and they sell their property, do the rebuild rights get transferred to the new owner? Are they bound to the property, or are they bound
Yes,
to the owner?
they're bound to the property themselves. That's correct. And then I would like to add also with the 2-year limitation, I believe individuals can apply for extensions of years of a year multiple times after that 2 year. If they still don't, if they're still not ready to rebuild at that point, they could potentially apply for an extension to that as well.
Okay, fantastic. Here's a technical definition question. Substantially same location. Is there a definition as to what that means? LA City's produced a 20% deviation on width and depth. Have you guys done any sort of similar defining that term?
We're still working to interpret that that definition internally. I believe we should be receiving a memorandum as to what that means for LA County. So we'll definitely provide those updates as they come.
Also, the city of Malibu is looking at allowances for moving a burned structure to a safer location on a parcel, I suppose that would just fall into your definition of substantially same location, and there wouldn't be any exemptions, or would there be a path for somebody if, they say, I had my house tucked into the slope of a hill surrounded by a forest, and now I'm thinking, I don't want my house anywhere near that if I'm going to rebuild it. Could I bring it down the slope onto the flat portion? If, for those are sort of unique situations, but are there mechanisms available, or has that been discussed for people who maybe want to place their house substantially different, but on a safer portion of the property?
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend that people come into the virtual counseling appointments, as specifically if it's the Santa Monica coastal zone. I recommend that they come into our office or request a virtual appointment where a planner can specifically answer those questions. I do know that, geotechnical comes into play when it comes to a slope or a bluff. And so that's something that building and safety can also provide more guidance on as well. I do know that we have a 50 feet setback requirement in terms of a bluff. But yeah, definitely coming in to get those specific questions answered.
Okay. Another question that's come up in our research of late. Just want to clarify for people on here who may not be as familiar. So if an architect or homeowner or consultant is dealing with a parcel which is in the Santa Monica Mountain Zone, my understanding is there was a little bit of confusion from our team as to who governs from a planning perspective. Now, my understanding is it's LA County, even though it's near Malibu, it's not governed by the Malibu Local Coastal Program, correct?
No, so if it is an unincorporated LA County parcel, normally they would be subject to the LA County local implementation program for the coastal. So in 2016, LA County took over jurisdiction over the coastal zone from the Coastal Commission. But because of this fire rebuild process, largely the coastal zone requirements are suspended.
Yes.
So that's why we're allowing for what was built there before, even if it doesn't conform to our current standards right now. So for example, Sunset Mesa, they have smaller lots with smaller setbacks. And so that's what we mean when we say that the coastal zone requirements are suspended at the time, because we're allowing for that rebuild to be.
Oh, I see. So
Mhm.
this may then explain, we were doing research on a project and my staff had a little bit of confusion based on who they were speaking to. For example, a parcel was RC5, which is, I believe, rural coastal, right?
Mhm.
And I think at one point somebody said, just follow the guidelines of R1, but then another planner said to specifically follow the guidelines of the RC5. So I think there's just some confusion around that. So would we still follow the zone specs of the RC5, for example? However, we would obviously be granted the existing setbacks of whatever was there prior. But if
Yeah.
anything goes above, if we go above 110%, we would snap to the RC5 requirements in this case.
Yes, correct. So you would be subject to the local coastal zone requirements should you go beyond the like for like rebuild or the 10% as well.
Okay, which brings me to my next point, which is it's been a challenge in LA County to obtain historic permit records or microfiche plans. My understanding is that LA County did not require certificate of occupancies to be issued until I think 2016. Is that right? Or 2009, one of those two dates.
So to my knowledge, in LA County, specifically in the coastal zone, it's been 3 different jurisdictions. So anything before 1975, it was LA County building and permit, or like any records provided would be building permits issued through LA County. Anything between 1975 to about 2016, would be the Coastal Commission. So that would have been any approvals in concept. And so that would require reaching out to the California Coastal Commission, who are based out of Ventura, to receive those records. And then anything beyond 2016, that was constructed beyond 2016, would be LA County, the Coastal Commission, the coastal development services that we have.
Got it. Development services. So then if, how about for microfiche or let's say building plans for other properties in like Altadena and such, is there a records request email or is there a portal where people can request actual permit records? Because right now the way it looks is if let's say my company were not the original applicant on Epic LA, we do not have access to many of those records. And so we're sort of trying to figure out what the roundabout way is. We can get excellent detail on the permit application and the details of what was proposed, but we're having challenges getting those original documents. And this becomes especially useful for what we just discussed, which is what were the original setbacks? What was the height that was originally proposed, right? Because that information, for example, in City of LA shows up on the second page of a permit. It's called the structural inventory, right? But if I don't have access to any kind of permit or something like that, then I'm sort of getting I can't find that information in great detail. And an assessor record also does not include a lot of those sort of structural details.
Yeah, so I know that we have microfiche records at our field offices. So however, the Altadena office has been impacted by the fire. Let me get back to you about a specific email that are requested. I know that at least out in the coastal zone, we're providing folders to any individuals that come in for counseling with all of the records that we have on file. So any building and safety records. But we've also been assisting people reaching out to the California Coastal Commission. However, on the Altadena side, that may look different just because the office has been impacted by the fire. And so that I know that planners are able to look at any permit approvals that we've had in the past. Some of them may be scanned. However, beyond that, for emailing, for an external email, let me go ahead and request that from our team, and I can send it in a summary email to you all.
Yeah, and then to follow up on that is, my company specifically, and this is going to be true for a lot of architects, this is going to be true. Many homeowners would rather hire an authorized agent to go in and do this stuff for them because they don't know the right questions to ask. They don't know what to look for. Is an authorized agent allowed to pull these records on behalf of an owner? And if so, do they require notarized authorization to do so, a power of attorney to do so? Or could an authorization verifying signature through means of like a driver's license, verifying that signature be fine? Or in some cases, people ask, can a DocuSign digital signature work for an authorized agent? Often, I don't think it really does, but there are some methods of verifying that.
Yeah, that's definitely a follow-up question that I can ask in terms of receiving an email for permit records, and then are non-owners able to request that information as well?
Yeah, with an authorization. All right. So thank you. That was my technical questions. Let's move over. We got a lot of questions from the audience as well, and I appreciate you taking the time to answer this. So we've got from Richard Balkans, can you clarify what floor area and height and the like for like rebuild are defined as?
Yeah, so that would be whatever legal approvals have been made in the past by LA County, or in the case of the coastal zone, the Coastal Commission. So anything that the latest permit that was approved for the property. LA County specifically does not have any record of building heights. So we are trusting that individuals apply with what was there before. But yeah, I'm just providing that information as well, that we don't have any record of what heights were prior to the fires.
So let's say that then in that case, you're probably going off of, was this a 1-story or a 2-story structure?
That would be the floor plan that we would be looking at.
Okay, right. And I guess the question then is like, how tall was a 2-story? How tall was a 1-story? Could it have architectural detail? Could it have a peak on a roof? Could it have a small attic? And I guess you confirm that through assumptions via imagery.
Yes, correct.
Got it. His second question, does floor area mean ground area footprint of the building, including usable area under roof area, such as under a breezeway? So that's sort of technical questions, basically that come into that, right? So some houses have a breezeway, some have a covered passage, some houses may have had a covered porch or patio on the front of the porch. Is floor area defined as covered area, or is floor area defined as interior, fully enclosed, wall to wall?
Wall
And
to
I think
wall.
this all wall to wall, and I think this also sort of wall to wall interior or wall to wall exterior. That's a big
Exterior,
that
at least
question.
on LA counties. In terms of LA County, what we're looking at is wall to wall exterior.
So for example, if I am an applicant and I come to you and I say, I found all my records, here's my assessor record, here's a structural engineer set of drawings, here's a permit record, and all three have different numbers. Will you take the greatest number of those three?
Yes.
Okay. Greatest number on records. Accepted, that's valuable. Could an existing 1-story house be rebuilt under like for like 110%? Rebuild process as a 1-story house, but with an attached ADU added at the second floor so that the overall structure would exceed 110% of the height of the original. Oh, so that's a great question. I think we had this. So this was in the AIA. So basically, an ADU is allowed to, depending on how you do your ADU, right? There's state ADUs, which are allowed an overall height of 20 feet if you match the slope of the main structure. But there are also definitions of ADUs that meet local code, which suggests they could have the height of the zone. So the question being, since the ADU is basically treated separately, could it be added as like a second story to the home, even though it's going to exceed the 110% height?
Yeah, so the ADUs in general do not apply to the 110% increase. That's its own separate thing. So I believe with that in mind, yes, a second story ADU may be possible. I am not sure if this is out in Altadena or in the coastal zone. That may also play a factor in term, and also just the septic requirements as well. So that's something to keep in mind.
So then how would somebody get certainty on that answer? Is that something you could provide to us with time? Because these are the types of things that are going to be coming up. You know, as a land use consultant, I can tell you, as soon as one person gets word of a highest and best use sort of exception or ruling that's in favor, it's just going to be applied for across the board. So we need to understand whether or not that's going to be a technical interpretation.
Yeah, I can follow up with you on that.
Okay. Second question for like rebuild. If an existing home had 2-story volume ceilings, can it be rebuilt with those 2-story volume ceilings used as 2 separate floors? So the floor area would exceed 110%, but the volume would be the same as the original. I guess that's a good question, which I would say we could preface to say, does an over and height ceiling get treated as 2x floor area? Or does it get treated as 1x floor area? In which case, how does that get measured? I assume you'd probably go off the table that was listed, but you tell me.
I can go ahead and get back to you on that.
Over and ceiling get 2x, and it can volume TBD. How is floor area calculated? That's a good question.
Yeah, so we are going off of, again, the whatever plot plans were available from beforehand. Anything that is within the exterior walls. At least on the planning side, I think it looks different for building and safety. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back on that one. SCE, LADWP do not disclose exact pole location and height data. Many former poles lack recorded easements, complicating logistics, architectural planning for like rebuilds. New temporary poles appear to be placed in locations with downed guys or queens posts. It may impact homeowners' ability to fully develop their lots if the utility requires additional clear areas around their equipment. Okay, so that's not really a question. That's more of a statement. But I guess maybe we can make a question out of that. I guess we'd need to follow up. Do you guys have a contact with SCE that you could provide? SoCal Edison on power that maybe could answer some things. Maybe we could get them on, or he's saying, where do we find easement information for poles? Justin, I would say typically for easement information, we pull a title report and get a plotted easements map, and that plots the easements for us. Do you guys have, Adriana, is there like a portal or a GIS filter that would indicate where these easements are located on a parcel, or is that something that has to be sourced from a hyperlinked exceptions portion of a title report?
Let me go ahead and check our GIS portal. I believe we do have that. I'm just not sure if that's publicly available. I also wanted to add that we are having consultations with Southern California Edison, at least I know at our Calabasas office. So let me get their contact information as well. But if you do visit the appointment website, there are options for Southern California Edison if you'd like to go ahead and speak to them directly.
Yeah. And then we've got a bunch of questions in the chat as well. Let's see. Can you, no, it was already answered. Happy to join. Let's see, reach out. Like for like, original house had a pitched roof. An original house had a pitched roof, but 8-foot ceilings. If the client decides to vault his ceilings in parts of the house, but the pitch of the roof remains similar, is that considered adding square footage?
No, I do not think. I think that would apply to the volume of the house itself.
Got it. So sort of in this 10% volume, I guess, that's what I'm saying. Where can one obtain further information on power poles and easements? That was already asked. Will these slides be shared after the presentation? Can we get a copy of your slides for after?
Yes.
Okay, typical volume interior height does not count towards square footage unless the height is tall enough that 2 full stories could be considered to fit into the volume. That's more of a response. For owners that can only afford to rebuild with a smaller building square footage, would this be considered a like for permitting purposes? I can answer that, yes. I'm a developer and lost my home in Malibu, an incorporated area, and I've noticed we only have 3 planners, of which 2 are being trained still. Without more plan approvers in LA County planning, this represents a real rate limiting factor. We have thousands of homes that will need planning support. What's being done to increase the number of planners? Is there a big hiring push right now?
So we are working to get our team up to speed. We're working as fast as we can to be able to address the volume of the applications that we're receiving. I know that there are more team members joining us in the coming weeks. So we appreciate your patience throughout all of this. We're doing the best that we can. We're about 3 months out from the fires, and yeah, we're just building the capacity to be able to help out, and we're being trained by some of the most knowledgeable people on our team as well as we're doing that.
Okay, terrific. If somebody were to submit, I guess here's a question that I think is worth clarifying. One cannot submit online, correct? All applications need to go through Epic LA, right?
Yes, we prefer that they do go through Epic LA. We do have a paper copy, but the same process we would be creating a profile and everything to be able to input that into Epic LA should we receive a paper copy of the application.
Okay, and just thinking, so if somebody's house burned down and they're in LA Incorporated Santa Monica Mountain region, are they best serviced by going all the way to the Altadena Recovery Center?
No.
Or are they best serviced by going to the Calabasas?
To Calabasas, because we do have planners on staff that are very knowledgeable of the coastal zone, which is specific to the Santa Monica Mountains. And so I would recommend that they go into our office in Calabasas.
Okay, got it. And then those hours we can post again, which were 7:30 to 10:30, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 a.m. I think to 11 on Saturday. Okay, very good. Does anybody else have any other questions? This is really helpful, Adriana. And then obviously we have some questions we want to get some detailed answers to, if you can help us out with those. I don't know, were you able to write those down, or would you like me to restate those in a document or something?
Yeah. Yeah, and in the future, I would appreciate just getting those. That way I can be as prepared as possible to come with those questions as well. I
Of
know,
course, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry. My apologies about that. I had actually prepped an email with some of those, and I think I forgot to hit send to you. So yeah, that'd be great. Do you think there's a chance that we could see you again on one of these calls, perhaps sometime in either April or May?
Yeah, I'll check in with our team and see what our capacity looks like. It may not be me. It just depends on where our team is at during that time.
All
But I'm
right,
happy
terrific.
to receive any questions.
Okay, and then just as a note to those who are on the call, these types of questions I will be attempting to compile answers to into our newsletter, which we publish at this point about once a month. That's about how often we're getting updates to some of the mayor's orders and executive orders and county orders and such. Any final thoughts on updates we should be looking for from you guys?
Yeah, so again, all up-to-date updates are on our recovery.lacounty.gov website. That's where we're posting any interpretations that we're getting in terms of policy, as well as updates on our applications and anything new that comes of any of the policy directives that we're receiving.
And then we have a question on timelines here. So many homeowners believe that the county is going to approve their drawings in less than 2 months. Is that realistic? I'd say a normal county single-family home ground-up construction timeline, I would quote to be probably 4 to 8 months, if it's not technically complicated with, unordinary sort of geotechnical or easements or something like that. So what do you think about that? Has there been any discussion about what a realistic or pragmatic timeline for delivery on approvals may actually end up looking like for a like for like?
Yeah, so our approval process starts when we invoice the applicant to begin the processing of that plan, to review it. We are expected to review it at 2 weeks after that invoicing happens. However, we are working to build the capacity to do that. Our system, as it is, we're just trying to we're working on configuring our internal application process and our workflow to be able to do that. But yes, once that application comes in, it's invoiced, we are expected to review and provide guidance within 2 weeks.
So that would be first pass in 2 weeks.
Yes.
And so no guarantees on overall timeline, cycles of review, anything like that. Are any departments, to your knowledge, being instructed, other than planning, to not be a review? For example, I think in City of LA, we've heard that perhaps fires, hydrants, and access may be waived for certain properties.
It depends. I believe, for example, if a home is on a sewer or on a septic system, that
Mm.
may have to be routed to public health depending on whether or not on what it runs on. Yeah, these timelines are varying, and then there's 4 different departments that are in charge of these applications. And yeah, like I mentioned, we're still working on that workflow. I wish I can be more specific as to the timeline. It's just changing, and yeah, we're glad for everybody's patience.
And a question from an applicant here is, once you submit to Epic LA, can you just explain the process of how that gets distributed out to various departments, or is the applicant responsible for finding, locating, and communicating with every individual department?
No. So as I mentioned in the presentation earlier, these applications will be routed to the various different departments internally. So we will be planning will review it, and then we'll route it to building and safety or public health afterwards. The applicant themselves are not responsible for making that happen. We'll be communicating with them as those updates come.
Terrific. So to answer your question, applicant Matthew, submit to Epic LA and they'll distribute it out for you. Wonderful. Well, I think we covered a lot of really good things here, and as time will tell, we'll get some clarity on many things. My understanding is City of LA, LA County, and Malibu, we're seeing less than 20 applications having been submitted to each of those jurisdictions at this point in time. So for those of you on the call, if you're feeling rushed by your client or thinking you're behind, that does not seem to be the case. However, I do recommend, and perhaps Adriana, you could comment on this, my instruction to most people is always that right now you're part of the early adopter phase. Right now, there's not 4,000 applications next to yours. If you wait 9 months, we can't really guarantee what the process is going to look like. There's definitely going to be a backlog. And so we advise people try to get organized quickly. And we can obviously help with that. Anybody who's been on our calls, we are gathering records for people, doing the research. You can see these are the types of questions we like to ask. And so, professionals can certainly help out in that regard. Wonderful. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I thank you so much, everyone. Again, this is a good segue for our next part. We have not yet determined what next part will be, but it's not going to be rebuild. It's probably going to be rediscovered, or moving forward with our planning, rebuilding effort. And thank you for the LA County. I think next segue would probably be more questions similar to what Jake and all of us has been discussed. We've been meeting 8 weeks already, and I think there's some evolving question and answer. So this is very essential for me as a business assistance center. We want to make sure our homeowner business worker, they all have a relevant information. So we want to be the extended ears and arms and eyes to help everybody. So stay tuned for our next part, part 3. We probably have something coming up in May while we gather more information from our agency resources, all of our partner, the county and the city. But meanwhile, like Jake mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to submit all those questions to us. So we want to be able to collect and share with our expert or agency, just to see we can, help moving things faster for everybody, including, all our government agency. So I think we have one more question in the chat, but we probably answered that already, I think.
I think
no, the Q&A, Gabriel, I think we answered it.
Let's see. Where do we find easement information for polls? They said TBD. They don't have that. I would advise Justin. The only thing I can think of right now, what we're looking at for easements is title reports. Title reports have those. You can go through us to get a title report, or you can, go to your title company directly. We can get some discounted ones. Which office for Altadena Planning? Altadena Planning is that'll be in the presentation that's out in Altadena. I think it's on Woodbury, maybe. Do we need to show existing conditions of the existing house that was destroyed as part of the planning process, or just the outline? I would say just the outline. If they're just doing exterior to exterior, I think they'll be accepting those outlines in a sort of general manner.
And we will be sharing the recording and slide from our speakers today and from Jake as well, just to update everyone. Stay tuned, look for our email newsletter and our email communication. Okay, what a great session. So much information that I don't think we will be able to get to through this in 1 hour to answer all your questions. So thank you. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you, Jake. And thank you for everybody for being with us for 8 weeks. Actually, more than that. It's like 8 weeks, I think.
Yeah, we'll be coming out with some more stuff, guys.
Yes, we
So
will.
stay tuned, stay in touch.
Stay tuned.